First and foremost, I want to take a second and do some introductions. My name is Dayton Hanson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at ICL Academy, joined tonight by one of our USPTA partners, Mr. Brian Dillman, who is the CEO over the USPTA. Brian, thanks so much for joining.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Dayton.
Amazing, absolutely. So Brian and I were talking a few weeks back and we got excited. And the reason we got excited is we were talking about our partnership is just some of the work that's happening, not only at ICL Academy, but also at the USPTA. And, many of our guests tonight are joining from ICL Academy, but we've also got members from the USPTA, which is wonderful. And so, at ICL Academy, it's been great. We started initially over 20 plus years ago as a nonprofit and initially focused on character and leadership and just so many amazing things from a community engagement standpoint and giving back. And our founder, Kirk Spawn, had the vision about 10 years ago, a little bit more than that now, to transition into a full-blown school. And the reason being is we looked at the power of what was happening within the foundation, and we said, why not award credit for what's happening from these kids' lives and turn this into a school? And that's ultimately what happened. And so we've now been online now for about the past 5 years. And as you can imagine, we started with just a couple of kids, and we have quickly morphed into the fastest growing school for passion-based individuals, whether that's tennis or golf, ice skating, whatever it may be. We've got 30 plus passions now that we work with as far as our kids across not only the United States, but internationally. ICL is currently connected to kids across 26 different countries. So the growth has been phenomenal. We're 500 plus kids now, which is amazing. We're excited. Our school year kicks off here in about 3 weeks. We're getting ready for student and family and parent orientation here in about 2 weeks from now. And can't break the seal yet, but we've got some exciting guests joining on that, as we always do. I know last year during orientation, we had Steve Nash join as our keynote speaker, who's one of our champion mentors, and we're super excited about that. And so, at ICL, again, our focus is providing not only the flexibility, but ensuring that our kids are on a pathway towards a college of their choice. I myself played baseball when I was growing up, went on to play college baseball, and it was an exciting time. But at the same time, what was most important to me was my academics. And I am grateful to say that I was pushed into a situation where it allowed me to perform well athletically, but really focus on the academics, which is where we center our focus here at ICL Academy. Is how do we allow our kids to pursue their passion, but ensure they're setting themselves up for an academic journey that's going to help change their life. And so we're excited to be able to continue to do that and work with our kids. And we've got some pretty amazing things coming up. So with that said, I want to kick it over to Brian for a moment. Brian, we're going to go through some questions. Chat is open. Q&A is open. I know I've put it in there to everyone that's on the line with us tonight. If you have questions, please use the chat function. Please use the Q&A function. I'll pay close attention to those and, help loft those up to Brian as we go throughout the night. But Brian, before we get into the questions, why don't you share some of the exciting things happening over at the USPTA, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to, and you'll have to cut me off at some point. I'll ramble a bit. But the USPTA has been around since 1927, and we are the oldest and the longest standing professional organization in the tennis and moving into the racket sports industry. We have over 14,000 members, and we like to think that we are the home of where people learn to become a career professional in the racket sports world. We do certification. We do certification for tennis, for pickleball, for padel, soon to be squash and platform tennis. But we also do continuing education. And then we also work on career services, networking, job search, job placement, things like that. And so I think when you and I had our conversation, I think we both got excited about thinking about who that new group of rackets professionals are going to be. And so that, I think, was the impetus for our call today. And, when I took this role over in December of last year, I really had three main goals. The number one major goal is we have to raise the profile of what it means to be a rackets professional. And, if you think about the numbers that you just gave, 30 passions, 26 countries, 500 students. And what number did you tell me were tennis players? 85%? Was that something? Yeah. Yep. So you got a lot of tennis players, which is amazing. I mean, that's, as you can see behind me, I was a college tennis player at Illinois and played junior tennis, and I'll tell my story in just a second. But those coaches have such influence over the players and the athletes and the students that you're talking to today. We need more of those people with passion, with love, but who can see what a career in racket sports looks like.
Right.
The second thing is we've got to continue to educate. So very similar to what ICL Academy's missions are, is we're always in that continuous learning, continuous education, curiosity business as well. I just came back from a couple of days in Cincinnati where our USPTA Midwest division did 3 hours of on-court sessions. We had a women's coaching forum. I mean, it's all really about education and continuous learning. And then the last goal was really recruiting new members. And so that's why the students that are on today are the potential students. You know, you are the market, you are the potential and the future of what the racket sports industry looks like. I'll just share my story real quick because I think it's a good one to talk about what career paths can be. Because I think when you think about, I want to work in tennis, or I'm a tennis player, what do I do next? I don't think we really see what that broad scope is. I was a junior player in Dallas, Texas. I went to college, played college tennis, had no idea what I want to do after college. And so my mentor and professional, Noni Michalka, recruited me to be a tennis professional. So I went back to Dallas. I got certified with USPTA in 1991. And I did that for about 1.5 years, and then very fortunate to get on and work for Wilson Sporting Goods. And so in the tennis industry still, then I worked in sales, I worked in marketing, I worked in international. I lived in Munich, Germany with Wilson for a bit, and ultimately came back and did a lot of other great things with Wilson, and then have continued on and volunteered with the USTA, and have always been active, and now back, working in tennis again. So that path is wide open for many, many different options, but I'll stop there and let you fire away with the next one.
No, that's amazing, Brian. Like I said earlier, we appreciate, not only you joining, but kind of what's going on within the USPTA. And you summarized it well. You and I both got excited just talking about the synergies, kind of the directions that each of the organizations is going. And for us as a school, just seeing the growth with the next generation, not only again on the tennis courts, but across all passions, just has been super exciting. So with that said, you've got a really interesting background, and I want to dig into a few different areas. Some of the questions we've already received from some of our families and our kids. And so I guess, first and foremost, you hit on this a little bit, let's talk about racket sports. Let's talk about the careers that might be available. Growing up, you play, you get in, maybe you're playing tennis, maybe you're playing pickleball, whatever it may be. And maybe the assumption is you get done, you finish at high school, you finish in college, and you're looking going, okay, well, maybe I didn't go pro, or maybe I did go pro, or maybe my career has ended, or maybe college has happened and now that's ended. What does that pathway look like? What type of programs are you guys starting to, again, put together? How do kids continue their journey down the racket sports path? What does that look like maybe after the collegiate or pro level?
It's really interesting because I think as I was looking at it, and then I think as kids are looking at it today, it's completely different. The racket sports industry right now is on fire. You have venture capitalists, private equity investors looking at building new facilities for pickleball, new facilities for padel, new facilities for platform up in the Northeast and the East, new tennis, multi-sport facilities. So there's never been a better time to really look at racket sports. And that doesn't mean you just have to be a teacher. You can teach, you can work for a foundation, you can work for a nonprofit, you can work in sales. Our team at the USPTA is filled up with marketing, sales, customer service, finance, accounting, videography. Like we have a whole team that do nothing but content creation and content management. Our neighbors across the street at the USTA, you have 250 to 300 people that work for them in all different areas. And so if you love sports and you're passionate about racket sports, you've got sales and marketing, you've got finance, you've got capital planning, they have architects. Architects that are working on city planning and rebuilding courts and rebuilding facilities and things like that. So I think people get stuck in this. If I want to go into tennis or I want to go into racket, I have to teach, which is absolutely not the case. Your passion can actually lead into a completely different path in this world. Who knew about franchising in the racket sports world, 5 years ago, but now there's 7 pickleball franchises that are opening all over the country. They're looking for general managers, sales and marketing, membership sales, facility management. So all different things you can do and stay in sports and stay in the industry.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's interesting. We've got many champion mentors that work with us at ICL Academy and the ICL Foundation. And these champion mentors, they do this philanthropically. They give their time back on their own. And, I think of an example of somebody like James Blake, who has been a champion mentor with ICL now for many, many years. And you talk about pickleball. James was a tremendous tennis player, as many people know. And now James is very heavily involved in the pickleball space. And it's just been such an amazing transition. And so, as you talk about kind of trends and growth and direction, it's just booming in all sorts of different directions. And I guess that maybe leads into my next question. And then we'll go to one of the questions that's just come in. But as we talk about the trends, the boom that's happening within racket sports, are there certain skills or qualifications that are maybe most valued within the industry today?
It's really funny. So I've traveled to 55 different countries over my career. And the one thing that resonates across every country, culture, language that I've talked about, and it's connection with people. And if you can connect with people, it doesn't matter what you're doing, doesn't matter what role you're in, you can be successful in almost any career in any venture. And I think the second thing to that is being able to listen and being open-minded and curious. And so those are the three things that I really think are critical to that. But also showing that you're committed. I think, one of the things there, so in the racket sports world, just on the teaching side right now, it's a guaranteed job market. And just so you're aware of what a job looks like, depending on where you are in the country, a beginning tennis pro, first out of, whether it's out of college or first time teaching, has the potential to make $60,000 to $80,000 a year. Then you move up to a head pro in that same ecosystem, you're at $120,000 to $130,000 a year. Directors of racket sports today at some of the best clubs in the United States are making $400,000 a year with full benefits, clothing allowances, 401ks, retirement. So I don't think people see this as a serious industry, but when you look at the numbers and the specs like that, it's incredibly serious. I mean, these directors are running multi-million-dollar businesses. And so I think this misconception or this perception of what the industry looks like. And I don't think we're giving it as much credit as it deserves.
I think you shared some interesting statistics there, from an economic standpoint. And again, I think just to your point, people may not be aware, and it's on us, whether that's you at the USPTA, us at ICL Academy, or other organizations out there, to continue to educate the next generation and be able to tell them that there are career pathways. Because I know for me, I ended up spending some time coaching baseball after the fact, but I didn't do it because somebody gave me insight or I networked appropriately or things like that. I did have a strong network, but I just wanted to stay connected to the game. But there were not these pathways that were created like USPTA is creating now, which I find very unique and interesting. And so I think what you've just kind of hit on is, as probably the most important thing that we need to do is continue to educate. And on the flip side, it's really important for our students to continue to ask those questions. And what else is out there? And how can we, in essence, stretch ourselves beyond what we think is the norm? Because there's so many new things popping up on a daily basis that people are not even thinking about what's the next thing to come today. We'll wake up tomorrow and something new is going to blossom, something new is going to come about. And that's just the world we live in now. So that said, I'm going to hit on one of the questions that came in via the chat just a few moments ago, Brian. And that question was this. The individual had said, I'm new to the tennis industry, and I want to know what's the best way to find trending information on modern coaching techniques and just coaching and teaching in general. The individual mentioned that they feel like it's very hard to find up-to-date information. Do you have any insight or direction on kind of how to go about or navigate those waters?
So we'll be a little self-serving here, but the USPTA does a really good job of. We have an asset called tennisresources.com, which is the latest and greatest videos and things like that. We have a brand new membership level called an apprentice membership, which is really designed for people interested in learning about the industry. It's $50, and you get access to tennisresources.com. That to me is probably the best place to start, because anytime we do a webinar like this, a conference, learning about more things about new techniques and things like that is all kind of captured there.
Got it. Okay.
And I think the thing is, we have 17 divisions around the United States as well. They are all consistently having updated educational courses and new clinics and workshops and things like that. So there's always constantly. So, our website is a really good resource to find out kind of what's happening.
Got it. I appreciate that insight. It's interesting for us on the Academy side at ICL. we're very interested in continuing to partner with tennis coaches, not only, in the United States, but across the world. And the reason being is we've got so many unique partnerships now with academies, individual tennis coaches, and you talk about the economics and things along those lines. It's another supplemental opportunity for a income of sorts to be able to continue, like I said, as a supplemental income to be able to provide for these coaches. And so, we create these unique relationships as we partner with them, create potential discounts with the academies, because what's important for us, we're a private school, but we're a private school that does something a little bit different than some of the other institutions that are out there. We do provide financial aid, we do provide scholarships. And on top of the financial aid and the scholarships, we also, of course, have the ability to provide certain discounts through our coaches and things along those lines. And so it's interesting to us to be able to work with different coaches, different academies. And so again, any coaches that are out there tonight, academies, directors, whoever it may be, feel free to reach out directly. We'd love to have a conversation with you guys, talk a little bit more about the economics of that and how that may work into your futures as well. So we'd love to chat more. Brian, changing gears a little bit, I want to kind of focus on the students for a few minutes, and I want to talk about starting young with them. What advice would you give young players who are just starting their journey within the tennis or racket sports space and, their dreams around becoming professionals? What advice would you give them?
To be professional or to be serious and committed, or what's the
Yeah. If they're looking to really get in, not only just professionally, but really trying to get to that collegiate level and then potentially professionally, what advice would you give them along their journey? What should they focus on?
I think the first thing you have to focus on is just master your craft and do it, but do it in a way that you enjoy. I think the enjoyment factor has to, you don't work on the result, work on the process. And if the process works and if the details and the grind works, the results are going to show up. I would say don't focus. I know it's really hard to say this, but don't focus on WTN. Don't focus on UTR and your ratings and your rankings, because that's going to get in the way of you actually trying to become a better player and a better athlete. I would say surround yourself with great people. Parents can help you lead you down that path, but make sure that the coaches that you have are open and communicative and are not in it for them, but they're in it for the athlete. And then make sure there's a balance between the parents, and you want parents to be there as supportive and loving and there to be there to have their role, but let the coaches do their job and let the coaches do what they're great at.
Yeah, that's great perspective. I mean, we have some unique relationships and partnerships, and as we work with coaches, we've had webinars such as this. Many of our coaches and other partners have said similar to what you said, which is there's a unique pathway for everyone. It's not a one size fits all. And I think, while the rankings may be important in some scenarios, in other scenarios, it might just be honing in on an individual skill, something you're trying to build on, whatever it may be. And that may not mean playing a tournament every week. That may be focusing on consistent practice on a few elements, whether that's a forehand, a backhand, a smash, whatever it may be, to continue to better yourself as you're trying to prepare yourself for that next step. So I think you shared some really good information there.
I'd add one more thing to that. Play a lot of matches. I think the kids today are so afraid of competition, or they don't put themselves out there. So what I've heard recently from college coaches as they watched, I was at the National 18s in Delray Beach a couple of weeks ago. They said the kids today, their technical skills are incredible, like better than they've ever seen, but their strategic and how to play point skills are where they're missing and where they can improve. So I would say continue to play matches, continue to play sets, put it on the line. The end result, if you think about tennis, it's an infinite game. It's not finite. You may go through college, but after college, you can always play. There's always going to be somebody you can play with.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Brian, as you can imagine, ICL didn't exist when I was growing up. ICL didn't exist when you were growing up. Online, specifically in the middle school, high school space, it just wasn't a thing at the time. And especially since COVID took place in 2020, online has just taken off. And it's no longer, I'm not sure about online. It's now becoming more of the norm. And that said, I kind of want to talk about balancing academics a little bit along with training competition. How can young athletes effectively balance their academic responsibilities, with the rigor of their training schedules required in tennis? You just talked about, for example, playing matches. What advice would you give this next generation kind of growing up about focusing on academics and kind of how to balance that with the tennis preparation as well?
there's some really good coaches out there that do this as well, and they mostly on the tennis side, not on the academic side. But what they do is they do training in the morning, school's kind of the middle of the day, and then they come back for session, either session 2 or session 3. But I think everything works better when there's a habit and there's a regular schedule. So I would say, regardless of what your schedule is, if you want to go, early morning, late at night, but make sure you schedule in academics, and make sure you're surrounding yourself around people that also value academics. Because at the end of the day, how many people ever, truly make it to Division I? How many people make it to the Pro Tour? So, academics will be the fallback, and will also be where you learn and can really manifest where you want to go within. If you want to stay in this industry, that's where you're going to learn that passion for, whether it is accounting or creativity and design and graphics or things like that. So, but I think the biggest thing is to make it a habit.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about making it a habit here at ICL, and we have our 6 Ps, and one of those is the process. And
Right.
being a process, having a plan in place, like you talked about, in essence, leading to creating habits is crucial. And I love what you said, and that's in essence why ICL exists. The reason that ICL has quickly become the #1 passion-based school is we do allow our families, our students, to have that flexible pathway. We still focus on the academic aspect, but it's like you said, it's not the traditional brick and mortar where you come in at 8 o'clock, you go home at 3 o'clock, and you either train before that or after that. The nice thing is, whether we're working directly with our students, our academies, our coaches, we give the flexibility to our students to be able to say, you know what, if you want to hop on from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning, knock out a few hours of work, and then go hit the court for 2-3 hours, have lunch, and then come back on, that's obviously an opportunity for you to do so. We don't have that set schedule every day, which makes it unique. And ICL is a little bit different. We use a college operating model. And so you think, well, when I say college operating model, what does that mean? Well, typically when you get to college, you're taking, a standard full load of classes: math, English, science, history, and, maybe an elective of sorts. So you've got your 5 courses. Well, unlike middle school or high school in a traditional format, you're not learning those subjects every single day. We, like I said, operate that college operating model, which is maybe Monday is your math seminar, where you have a 1-hour seminar. It's live with your teacher, with your classmates. It gives you a chance to not only talk about the topics and the elements at ICL and that you're focused on for the week, but it also gives you a chance to have the community engagement. You're getting a chance to interact with your peers. And what's cool is, we get out to these tournaments. I was just out in Barnes Tennis Center out in San Diego for the 18s and 16U nationals, which I got to give a shout out. Eva Jovic, one of our 18U girls, ended up winning and is on her way to the US, which was amazing. But it's so fun because we actually had an opportunity we had 50 girls, which, I mean, by far and away dwarfed any other school or anyone else that had a conglomerate of people there. And we got a chance to get together with them the night before the tournament started. We sat down, we had a little pizza dinner, pasta dinner. It was just great to just get a chance to hang out with our students and just recognize them and say, thank you, we're here for you, how can we support you? And so it was a lot of fun to be able to do that. And so I simply share that in the sense more so that, we're in this unique space now where things are evolving and changing and just they're going in a different direction, and it's exciting to be a part of. So we'll talk a little bit more about ICL, but I wanted to hit on that because you brought that up and kind of tied to that. So
well, think about the absenteeism and the stress that puts on the kids too. And I can remember in high school, being out for tournaments and not being gone on a Thursday and a Friday, and the teachers rolling their eyes going, oh, it's you again, as opposed to being able to plan that out and having flexibility. And I think that has been one of the reasons that some of these athletes have been successful. They've had opportunities like what ICL is offering, which is flexibility in your learning. And the same thing happens in college. I mean, I was talking to a couple of college athletes, like, the professors say, because there's a lot more content being dumped into schools, not dumped, but being put on kids in classes these days. And high school, at least for my kids that went through high school about 4 or 5 years ago, it's much more difficult than when you and I grew up. I mean, so it is definitely college prep. And so you need to be present. So I think this flexibility you're building is going to create better students, and that flexibility is phenomenal.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. I know a question had come in asking, and we get this question from time to time. If you haven't had a chance to go to the ICL website, the common question is, what does ICL stand for? And it's the Institute of Champions and Leaders. And the reason we say champions and leaders, we don't just say that on the court, that's off the court too. And that's a mantra we go back to from when the ICL Foundation started as a nonprofit, is again, developing these skills to create champions and leaders, not again, sports wise, it's great if that happens, but more so just in life in general. And so that continues to be a focus of ours. As far as what differentiates us a little bit, which was kind of a second layer of that question, there's a lot of different elements about ICL Academy. So ICL Academy, again, we're not a tennis academy, a golf academy, anything like that. We're a traditional private school in the sense that we are providing academics, and we work with people like the AJGA, which is the American Junior Golf Association, or USPTA, or partners across these different organizations or different passions to be able to continue to help provide a pathway for our kids. And so with us, one of the unique things is our champion mentors, similar to what we're doing tonight with you, Brian. But we've got these champion mentors, whether that be Novak Djokovic, whether that be Monica Seles or a James Blake, or whether that be Bodie Miller or Steve Nash across other sports and passions. They donate their time to where they'll sit down with our kids. They'll be able to mentor them and coach them and guide them and help develop them and give them insights and share insights that these kids may never get access to. And it's just such an amazing thing to be able to provide to them. And then one of the other things is we focus on our impact learning, and impact learning is an award-winning model that was developed internally, where ICL has in essence created all of their own curriculum. ICL doesn't go out and purchase curriculum or anything along those lines. And there's not a problem with that. Many institutions do that, and that's okay. But ICL really focuses on how do we create a unique experience for these kids where we're not only just developing them on their traditional math and English and science, we want it to relate to their passion. I'll give you a perfect example. You think of sitting in a math class, I remember sitting down and learning fractions or different things like that. What we try and do at ICL is we'll take it and tie it to the passion. And we'll look at a tennis court, for example.
Like that. Yeah.
We'll look at angles and say, okay, what's the angle of this shot? And we'll try and tie the data in that way so that it's engaging. And
Brilliant.
the kids are walking away going, you know what, that's relatable. That's something I want to be a part of. That's exciting. And so we continue to focus on that. And of course, we also are ingraining in life skills. And what I mean by that is, sports management and elements of sports psychology and fiscal responsibility, to where I wish I learned growing up, what it meant
Absolutely.
to the economics or tax codes or anything along those lines, because those are the things you're not prepared for typically coming out of high school. And so those are some of the unique things that make us a little bit different. I wanted to at least hit on that while that question came in. So.
Well, and I think that's the great thing about some of the individual sports that you guys are focused on at ICL as well, because, the individual sports, the athletes that go through that have, I believe, really strong skills for decision-making, problem solving, stress management, self-determination and self-discipline and things like that. So with this individualized and this flexibility on the learning path, I think you just really create some great platforms for success. But I think the other thing that does is, you take, and I was thinking about as you were talking, and you're talking about sports management, most of the sports agents that I'm aware of came out of tennis or came out of as a player or a coach or or a professional player, again, because they kind of learn these skills as they're going through the sports, but honed them in school and then obviously use them and applying them now to their careers.
Right. Yeah. Well, and everything you're talking about and I'm talking about, Brian, it's a balance. At the end of the day, you mentioned this earlier. You talked about playing a lot of matches. One of the most crucial things that we instill within our students is finding that balance. There is a balance where there is a point where you reach too much, whether that's too much academics, too much training, whatever it may be. There's a balance for everyone. And so we really hone in on that with our kids and talk about that. And that leads into one of our upcoming questions that, I really wanted to talk about. And that's the mental side of things, Brian, because again, I think if you cross that threshold of, the balance and it becomes too much, the mental piece comes into a little bit. So I want to ask you this question, mental toughness, especially within tennis, is crucial. Do you have any strategies you may recommend for, developing and maintaining a really strong mental game?
I was very, very lucky growing up as my coach, and this is back in the 80s. She brought in sports psychologists before it was not only trendy, but even cool, or even maybe knew what the topic was. And, we worked on breathing and visualization and things like that. And I was lucky, again, at Illinois, they had a big psychology department that was really supportive of all the athletes. So I think, again, it goes back to finding the right people that are around you, and realizing it's different than just hitting forehands and backhands. Mental training is an actual training. It is an actual skill that needs practice like everything else. So there are tons of resources out there. There's tons of resources that we can lead you to too. But I think it's a practice skill that needs to be treated just as seriously, just like physical off the court training, but mental training has to go along with it. But again, I was very lucky. So that was kind of part of my ethos growing up. But again, it goes back to those habits. If you create that as a habit of what you do every day, I work on court, I work off court, I work on my mental training. It includes fitness, it includes food and nutrition. That whole kind of circle all has to be in balance for the athletes to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think you hit on this a little bit earlier too, Brian, and you talked about the role of parents. Obviously parents, I think, play a role in, the mental prep, as do administrators such as myself, or teachers or coaches. I want to talk about the parents a little bit. And I want to ask you this question. What role should parents play in their, children's aspirations in racket sports, without adding that undue pressure? What's that fine line? What type of role should they play?
It's a really hard one because, I was a parent. I had a baseball player as a son who wanted to play college baseball, had a softball player, and my parents, and through me, and I've seen, I've read, I've heard, it is a really hard one because, the parents ultimately want the best for their kids. I think it's when the parents get too involved in the results and not the process and not the effort and not the work that the kids put in is where it comes out of balance. And I think the other thing is parents need to just learn and find the right professionals and coaches that they believe in and trust so they can kind of take that step back. They don't feel like that's part of their everyday need. They can let the coaches and the professionals do that part. But I think the biggest thing right now is sit down with a coach and map out a plan and decide who's going to be what in what roles each of you are going to play, parent, coach, player, and how we map that out. And I would encourage all of our professionals to do the same thing. If you don't have a roadmap with somebody that has a kid that's going to be, whether it's college potential, professional potential, create a roadmap, create a plan, but create a roles and responsibilities folder or chart or whatever you want to call it, and agree to it ahead of time. Don't do it in the middle, and don't do it in the middle of the court, when somebody's winning or losing, but have real meetings about it. I mean, treat it like, college is a serious thing with serious investment. So is online school. So is the professional tour. These should be treated seriously, and the kids should be the beneficiary of those good conversations between the parents and the coaches.
That's great. Yeah, it's interesting. You tied a few things together there, and I appreciate what you said. Now, the role of a parent is especially with a individual that's interested in passions. It doesn't matter if it's acting or figure skating or tennis, or right. It's such a fine line, and we talked about balance there. And as a parent, you want the best for your kids, and sometimes we may not know what the best is. We may assume, we may make that determination on our own, but we also have to take a step back sometimes and look at the big picture. And our kids have to be able to step in. And at the same time, we have to leverage others. We are fortunate at ICL to be able to leverage resources such as Dr. Jim Lair, who, from a mental standpoint is just one of the best in the game, and other, partners that we work with, such as Two Minds and things along those. It's okay to leverage those additional resources. And in fact, it's often something that we encourage, because everyone out there has a different perspective. And I think it's okay to listen to those different perspectives, because again, as I mentioned earlier, every one of us is unique. Nobody's going to go down the same pathway. And that's honestly, that's folds back into ICL Academy. When we sit down with our kids and families on day one, when they're talking about coming to ICL as a student, there's not a one size fits all. One of the first things we do is we say to the child, we say to the parent, tell me about your academic background. Tell me about your journey from a passion standpoint. Where do those things stand in your life today? Because if we have a child that says to us, I've been playing tennis for 4 years and I simply just want to go to college. It doesn't matter if I go D1, Ivy League, D3, I just want to go and I want to play. Well, then that's a certain pathway we're going to help them get on. If they sit down and they say, I want to go to an Ivy League, and we know that maybe it's going to take an additional 3 credits or some AP courses or certain test scores, we're going to create the pathway. The reason I bring all that back together is the uniqueness of every individual. And you hit on some of those elements as well. So as a parent myself, I can't look at my two kids and say, you know what, they're both going to get the cookie cutter approach, because I can tell you my daughter and my son are drastically different.
Oh yeah. Well, and not only that, but I think we have stopped letting the kids fail, because without that, they're not going to really learn what to do under pressure or how to handle that.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the last part to that is, we're not doing red wire, green wire here. Like, this is not life and death stuff. This is really important for a period of time. And that period of time is when you're going to put a lot of energy and a lot of focus and a lot of money into this stuff. But if it's tied only to results, there's a big risk there. But if it's tied to the process and growing and getting better and better and better every day, it's 1% better every day is kind of one of my mantras as well. And I think that continuous improvement is what I would love to see more parents work with kids on.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, Brian, and you hit on this. I want to talk about, youth programs specifically tied to USPTA, initiatives, programs, offerings, development of young tennis players or racket sports players. Again, if you can hone in on what is all of the development happening within the USPTA space right now? How can kids continue to grind and get involved in that, even at a young age? What are all the different outlets? I want to make sure that that's really ingrained in all of our students' minds and be able to share this out, in essence, to anyone else that hasn't joined us tonight. We had a large list of registrants, and we've got a large student body that I know that they're going to want to watch this. Some of them are training or on the court actually as we speak, or maybe out on the field. I'd love to be able to share that back to them, kind of talk about what are all those different pathways from a youth standpoint right now that the USPTA can offer.
So I think one of the great things about the USPTA is we don't have a set plan either. We don't tell our professionals, you must teach this way or you must do this, which back to what kind of you guys specialize in as well, is that makes every coach and every professional really individual. But I can tell you that there are some great there's some great programs for the youth that use different low compression balls. There's red, yellow, and green balls that make it just easier for the kids to learn, and track bounces and things like that. And then you move up into other junior programs and youth programs. But what I would really encourage is wherever whether it's the students or the parents are, check our website. We list all our members and they're all available to you. Check them out. Go do a test drive and see if you like what they and how they teach and how their methodology goes. Some people do a lot of drill only, some people do a lot of play only. So it really depends on what style fits best with the student. And I think that's what I really like about the USPTA. Our philosophy is, continuous education and helping people understand the why of why we teach. But we try not to do one specific program or one way. I know the USTA has done a lot with red ball, which is a really great way to start. And that's a progressive way that you can move up. And all of our professionals support that, as well as transition balls too, at least to get people into the sport. And then from there, I think you're not going to stay with the same coach your whole career as well. Right. And I think that might be a common miss. And I think a lot of professionals would even tell you as well, is like, man, I can get them up into the 12s and 13s, but the minute they start, high school and playing higher performance stuff, I'm going to hand them off to somebody else. And yeah. I think that's the other thing is we have such a great network within the USPTA of professionals that work together and bounce things off each other and really build that camaraderie. So, I can call you and say, hey, I got this kid I need some help with, and no problem, send him over. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, it's so interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking of some of our champion mentors, and many of them are coaches within the tennis space. And I think of someone like a Brett Hobden, who, got a tennis, and Brett, was influential in Andre Agassi's life for a certain period of time. And I think of Christian Groh, who, again, associated to one of our champion mentors, Tommy Haas. There were times where Christian spent with Tommy or Brett spent with Andre, but they weren't their coach for their entire life. And there's certain inflection points where maybe it makes sense to go a different direction. And in other cases, there may be situations where coaches last the entire time, but we also find our kind of our niche and where we're best. And, even for me coaching, was it better for me to spend in the high school, the collegiate level? There's a niche for all of us, I think. And it makes sense to be able to kind of determine where is that niche, and you as a coach get an opportunity to recognize that and say, you know what, my threshold is this, or I really thrive with these types of individuals, whether that's kids, adults, and maybe it's a one size fits all, and maybe that does work for you. But there is a uniqueness there, like you talked about. And I think that there is a pathway that you're not just going to end up on the same pathway the entire time. There's going to be a lot of different routes that go a lot of different directions. And that's what creates the opportunity for tennis
Correct.
coaches to be able to jump in and be a part of this journey. It's not just one person along the way. There's going to be many resources that help a lot of our, not only kids, but just tennis aspirations as in general.
I think one of the other things that I would like for what the USPTA is and to become is kind of your overall resource for everything racket sports. And you're talking about the parents, Frank Giampaolo wrote a great book about how to be a tennis parent. I mean, that's something that, everybody should read and take some nuggets from and things like that. But, those are resources that we have at our disposal to share with other people, as well as webinars and things like this too. So it's, that's really, we're here to be a resource, and we're here to help our professionals succeed in whatever they want to succeed in. And, like you said, different paths for everybody. Well, every tennis professional or racket professional is not the same, doesn't have the same path either. Some kids just want to work with 10 and under. Some want to work with high performance, and some want to be on the tour. So
Right.
We've got to provide skills and additional education for all of those paths as well. So I think that's kind of how we look at it, very similar to how you guys see it.
Yeah, and I guess one more point to that, Brian, that you just said, and that is there's also a uniqueness to the size. And what I mean by that, there are coaches that maybe work for academies or created their own academy, and maybe it's 10, 15, 20, 25 kids they work with. And on the flip side, maybe it's just one kid, and that's okay. And that's
Right.
what's interesting to us as well at ICL. We see it all the time. I was just out at Barnes, like I said, I had a chance to see a few of our coaches, Richard Bowie, who's a great coach that we work with. He's got a group of kids that he's really focused on, and working with. And three of his kids were there that were at Barnes at that tournament. But it's okay if it's one, if it's three, it's 10. It's
Right.
what works for you as a coach and as an individual. And when I think, for me, at least I'll talk about baseball. When I kind of took a step back was when I noticed I was stretching myself to where I wasn't making the impact on the kid anymore that I wanted to make, where I was doing too much of all right, I'm casting a wide net. I've got a lot on my plate. I'm going to try and make sure I can provide the best possible experience, but I'm not actually getting the best possible experience that I was able to give in the past. And so we all find that threshold, and that's going to be different for everybody. So.
Well, I think isn't the coach's job to keep the kids into the sports. I mean, that's ultimately the job. You want to keep them in it, excited. I had the pleasure of interviewing Kim Kleisters a couple months ago, and asked her what was her secret, and she said, when I was happy, I played my best.
Yeah.
And finding ways to stay happy and be happy is critical to this whole entire process, and that is meaningful for the coaches too. So to your point, if you're happy coaching one person and taking them as far as you can take them, great. If you're great at academies, great. There is no cookie cutter answer for that either. But I think for the athlete and as a coach, like you just said, taking that step back, if you see that kids aren't happy and they're not loving showing up every day, then I would say look at yourself first, and then make sure that those environments are really, really good.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Kim. She's one of our favorites. She's a champion mentor.
Awesome. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, we just had her. Gosh, I'll have to go back to my Rolodex, but it was probably in May time. She was on with us we did a webinar with her, and she's truly one of the best. So I love that you brought her.
Yeah, great stories, but also, I think her thing was she told the story about when she won her first Grand Slam after losing in 3 finals.
Yep.
And wasn't even that happy about it, just glad it was over.
Yeah.
And think about the mentality of that. You work so hard, you get to 3 finals, and you're so tough, and it's not the joy, it's the relief.
Yeah.
But again, everybody's different. I mean, everybody's different, and there is no one way to be successful like that.
When you talk about pathways, I mean, Kim's a perfect example. Kim was at the top of her, at the peak of tennis and chose to walk away, and she had a family. Right. Kim came back and retired again, and then Kim came back again. I mean,
exactly right.
You talk about journeys, you don't know where the journey is going to take you. So it's pretty amazing. Brian, I want to be cognizant of time, not only yours, but obviously those on the call. And, there's maybe 1 or 2 more questions I'd like to kind of wrap up with that have either come in or were previously shared. And I guess first and foremost, talking about, the tennis landscape, I know USPTA is doing a lot in racket sports in general, and there's some exciting things happening. I want to hone in on tennis, and specifically, based on the fact that, we at ICL, we don't, have any yet pickleballers. I'm sure they play it recreationally, but we've got a lot of tennis players. And so my question would be, what are your thoughts on the future of tennis as a sport? And what should our young players and our students, and professionals really look forward to?
Well, tennis is having as good a time, I think, as possible. And I mean, if you look at if not, I mean, take the numbers away because we can argue whether we like the numbers or not. But courts are booked.
Yeah.
Professionals are full. I mean, it is 100% job guaranteed job market. Everybody all over the country, different shapes, walks, lives are all looking for professionals to help fill need and desire and demand. So I feel like tennis is in good shape. To make it in better shape, I think tennis needs the enthusiasm and the passion that pickleball got during the pandemic. And the people that are anti-pickleball forget that all pickleball did was organize themselves in local communities and went to local government and, community government meetings and said, we want pickleball courts. Well, tennis did that back in the 70s and 80s. And we've lost that mojo because we've already got tennis courts. Well, now that we're losing them, which is a concern, we need to get that enthusiasm and energy back to start advocating again for tennis. And this is not a national thing. Tennis doesn't work from a national level. Tennis works from a grassroots. So, if you live in San Diego or if I live in Maitland, Florida, I need to go to the local government. I need to go to the hearings or the meetings and say, we need tennis courts. We need to keep our tennis courts. We need more tennis courts.
Yeah.
That's the biggest, I think the facility and the number of courts is our biggest risk to tennis, but it's also the biggest opportunity. There's more programming, there's more play. The visibility of the players is phenomenal. And I think, when you watch the quality of the players now and the kids, it's off the charts. The league programs all over the country are doing really well. So, I mean, I think the other difference, just as a quick aside, pickleball is a game. It's a social, it's recreational. Tennis is a very difficult skill. And I think we got to keep those two very, very separate. That, tennis is learned, and I'm very proud that I can play tennis at a proficient level, just like I'm sure you play baseball at a very proficient level. So I don't think we should marry the two together. I think they need to stand alone, but I think they can work together because we've got about a 30 to 35% lift from people who play pickle that start into tennis. But
Right.
Tennis, I think, needs more play opportunities, needs more social opportunities. But tennis in general, I think, is in good shape. It could be in better shape, I think, if we really make sure facilities stay there and we don't lose our courts.
That's great. That's great. Well, we haven't even talked about padel or paddle. That's a whole other.
That's a whole other webinar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time. If you haven't had a chance, I know you have, but those that have not had a chance to play, it is a great time. So, Brian, as we wrap up, I want to kind of give the floor to you. Any final thoughts? Whether it's for our students and our families, whether it's for the members of the USPTA that are joining us tonight. Anything you want to share as we kind of wrap up. And I personally just want to say thank you to you for joining us. It's been incredibly influential to be able to have you on, be able to speak with you, and more importantly, to the guests that are on with us tonight. I know it's not always easy to give back your time, whether you're on the East Coast and it's 7, 8 o'clock at night, or whether you're on the West Coast and it's approaching the 5 o'clock hour. I just wanted to say, thank you for that. So anything you want to share to kind of wrap us up, Brian?
Well, I first want to thank the USPTA members that joined tonight, and I did see you on there, so thank you. And they're from all over the country, too, including San Diego. But I also want to say, I think, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll continue to say, there's never been a better time to be in the tennis and racket sports world. There's so many new opportunities, and there's so many people thinking a little bit differently. I think technology is going to grow in tennis and other racket sports because it needs to. I think tennis is lagging in technology and using statistics and data analytics to actually help players improve. I think that's a huge opportunity. But I think ultimately getting more people and looking at careers in racket sports is really what our main driver is, because I think that's going to fuel the success and the next 50 to 100 years of our association. And so I thank people that are interested in learning. I think anybody that's, that got on today, whether you agree or disagree with what we're talking about, I thank you at least for being open and listening and being curious. And I think, that's the way we grow together, is we grow by asking questions, by challenging each other, and by being curious. So thank you for the opportunity. I love it. I think your students and hopefully your families are truly looking at racket sports and tennis as a career path. And please reach out. We do have a mentorship program as well. I promise I'm almost done, but we do have a mentorship program that is great. We have master professionals that are happy to work and talk to people about careers. You know, if you have somebody in your local level, we can match them up. And there's just so many opportunities, I think. And so use us as a resource, uspta.com. We're always available. We'd love to have conversations, and we'd love to, you know, and learn more from the students and parents, what more they would like to learn about careers. So maybe there's something we didn't touch on today. We'd love to learn, like, what else can we tell you to get you excited about it?
I love that. Yeah, I love that you shared the resource there at the end as well of, how to get in contact. And I think that's important. And like you said, going to your website, and on the flip side, same with us, iclacademy.org. If you're on as a USPTA member, I know our kids and I know our families, they know how to get to the website. But if you're on as a USPTA member and you're interested in talking about a relationship, between you and ICL Academy and what that could look like from an economic standpoint, or just in general, and how we can continue to help support you in your journey, we'd love to talk about that. Don't hesitate to reach out, find us on that. We will have this over the next couple of days available and shared out with everyone that joined us tonight. So thank you again, Brian. More importantly, thank you, for joining. I know you just got back in town and it's been a long day for you, but we really do appreciate your time tonight.
My pleasure.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.